A long time ago, a beautiful princess lived in a large castle. And then one day her father gave her a golden balloon for her birthday. The princess liked the gift so much that she spent all her time with it. On one of these days, the girl went out to play with a ball in the garden. But having played, she did not notice how she ended up near the pond. The princess threw the ball up and tried to catch it. But he slipped out of her hands, rolled on the grass and fell straight into the pond. The princess tried to get the ball, but it was at the very bottom. Then the girl had no choice but to sit by the pond and cry bitterly. But then a noise was heard from the grass. The princess looked back and saw a frog in front of her. She looked at the girl and asked why the princess was crying. The girl was very surprised to see a talking frog, and told her how she dropped the ball into the water. The frog listened attentively, jumped around the pond and invited the girl to return the ball. But in return she asked to fulfill one request, to make friends with the frog and take her to the palace. After a short thought, the princess agreed. Then the frog jumped into the water and disappeared from sight. Soon she appeared with a golden ball and threw it to the princess. Having received her gift back, the princess happily ran to the palace. Then the frog reminded the girl of their agreement. But the princess just laughed and said that such an ugly frog could not live in a palace. So, the girl left the frog and returned to the castle. In the evening, the king, queen and princess gathered for dinner. But as soon as they started eating, they heard a knock at the door. Then the butler entered the room and announced that a frog was sitting at the threshold. She asks permission to enter and claims that she was invited by the princess. The king looked sternly at his daughter. And the princess told him about everything that happened in the morning by the pond. The father thought about it, and then said that if the princess promised something, she should keep her word. Then the king ordered the butler to let the frog in. The door opened and a small frog entered the castle. In several leaps, she found herself at the table. The frog then bowed to the king and thanked him for allowing her to enter. After that, the frog jumped to the princess's plate. The king ordered a saucer to be brought to the guest. But the frog stopped him and said that he could eat from the princess's plate. The girl was beside herself with rage. But she didn't show it, hoping that after supper the frog would leave the palace. However, when the princess got up from the table, the frog followed her. And after a while, the guest wanted to sleep. The princess offered her a guest room. But the frog said that it wants to sleep in the girl's bed. And the princess, fearing to disappoint her father, agreed. Then the frog jumped onto the king's bed and rested its head on the soft pillow. And the princess had to lie down next to her. In the morning, the frog woke the girl up and said that she had a last wish, after which she would definitely leave. And the heart of the princess was filled with hope. The frog paused, looked into the girl's eyes, and then asked to kiss her frog lips. The princess jumped out of bed in a rage and flatly refused to kiss the nasty frog. And the guest, hearing this, wept bitterly. Suddenly the princess felt so sorry for the poor frog that she had no choice but to kiss her. As soon as the princess did this, a bright light lit up the room. A moment later, when the light went out, in front of her was no longer a frog, but a handsome prince. He said that once an evil witch put a curse on him. And to break the spell, he needed to spend the day with the princess and get a kiss from her. The astonished princess was happy. They went to the king together and then got married. And they lived happily ever after. And the princess never again judged people by their appearance.
In a kingdom full of happiness and joy, the king and queen lived. They dreamed of only one thing, to have a child. When they had already lost all hope, their daughter was born. She was very sweet and beautiful. On this occasion, a great celebration was arranged, and many guests were invited to the palace, among whom were good sorceresses. They were given the warmest, most cordial welcome. But the king and queen made a big mistake. They forgot to invite another sorceress. She had not left her tower for many years, and everyone thought that she had died long ago. When the time came to give gifts to the princess, the fairies generously rewarded her with beauty, a kind heart, intelligence, a beautiful voice, the ability to dance and play various musical instruments. When the turn came to the last sorceress, an evil fairy, whom they forgot to invite to the holiday, unexpectedly entered the hall. Cutlery was immediately brought for her, but she felt that she was not received as respectfully as she should have. Pulling the goblet and plate away from her, she muttered a spell. The sorceress wished that on the day of her 16th birthday, the princess pricked her hand with a spindle, and from this she died. The queen wept bitterly at the wish of the evil sorceress, and the king ordered to seize the witch. But she had already disappeared with an ominous laugh. Fortunately, the last of the fairies has not yet had time to say her wish to the princess. She could not undo the spell, but promised that the girl would not die, but would only fall asleep deeply until she was awakened by the kiss of love. The king immediately ordered the destruction of all spindles in the kingdom. And then came the day of the princess's 16th birthday, the day that the evil fairy spoke about. The princess grew up to be a beautiful and kind girl. The king ordered 3 sorceresses to watch over her. Fairies guarded her like the apple of an eye. On this day, the king and queen locked the girl in a room to prevent a terrible event. But the princess did not want to be locked up. Suddenly, a door appeared in the wall of her room, which the girl had never seen. She heard strange sounds outside the door. Burning with curiosity, and not knowing what awaited her, the girl entered her. The door led into a dark room in which a woman was sitting with her back to the princess. She was spinning. The girl had never seen a spindle in her life. She became curious. The princess went to the spindle, touched it, pricked her finger and fell into a deep sleep. And that woman turned out to be an evil fairy who was very happy that her spell had come true. Now everyone called the princess Sleeping Beauty. Upon learning of the misfortune, the kind sorceress decided to put the king and queen and the whole kingdom to sleep until the girl awakens. Soon, such impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes grew around the castle that no one could get through such a thicket. 100 years later, a handsome prince from another kingdom went hunting. Seeing from afar the towers of the abandoned castle, he remembered the old story about the Sleeping Beauty that his parents had told him. And the prince decided to get inside. He struggled to make his way through the impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes. But in the end, the prince approached the gates of the abandoned castle. He walked around the entire castle, and looked into the throne room. There the prince saw the king and queen sleeping. Then, in one of the rooms, he noticed Sleeping Beauty. She was sleeping on a bed decorated with flowers. The prince went to the bed, looked at the beautiful princess, and felt love fill his heart. He could not restrain himself and kissed Sleeping Beauty. And at that moment, she opened her eyes and saw a handsome prince.
Hello!
The king and queen also woke up, as did the whole kingdom. They were overjoyed. And in honor of the bride and groom, the most beautiful wedding that the world has ever seen was arranged right there. Since then they have lived happily ever after.